Yeah, I know, Leah. It's just pointless.
SpongeBob sucks. The stories lack meaning. Every character has been modern SpongeBob sucks. The stories lack meaning. Every character has been flattened into a
Well, I haven't watched SpongeBob since I was like 14. I wouldn't know.
Single exaggerated personality trait. The animation itself looks way too polished, and the endless amount of spin-offs are just plain disrespectful.
Oh, I've seen the SpongeBob
Nickelodeon
movies, though.
has squeezed every last doubloon they possibly can out of that sponge. And no, it's not just because we grew up. The decline of SpongeBob SquarePants can be traced back to one specific moment in 2005, because the creator of the show, Steven Hillenburg, never wanted the show to continue after season 3. But once Hillenburg stepped away, and especially after his death, the network transformed SpongeBob into a content machine that totally ignores the vision and the soul of its original creator.
I never heard that.
Am I really gonna defile this grave for money? Of course I am!
The story of SpongeBob isn't about the animation, it's about the animator, because like most creations, the humans behind them are often what make them so special. The greatest Nickelodeon show of all time wasn't created by some animation expert or a corporate product design team. He was a marine biologist who liked to create weird little sea creatures in his free time. Steven Hillenburg wasn't a big dreamer. He didn't have Hollywood aspirations. He was very grounded and rooted in reality, which is why he never thought that being an artist was a real career path. Lucky for him, he was also extremely interested in marine science. His practical life plan was that he could get a job in his field and maybe get to express his inner artist here and there.
I was minoring in art, and I had teachers in the art department saying, "What are you doing? Why aren't you in the art school?" I guess I thought, well, I do this, I like marine biology and science, and I'm an artist, so I'll end up making exhibits or working at a museum or something. I just immediately put the two together.
Yeah. What were you painting? Were you painting sort of realistic, classical realism of fish?
Weird, these weird, surreal landscapes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with humans.
After college, Steve got a job at the Ocean Institute in California. He enjoyed teaching children about marine life.
Hold on.
Boys, let's go. Oh my.
Alright, let's go.
Around Dana Point, where he spent a lot of his time studying invertebrates in coastal tide pools, which consisted of aquatic animals without backbones like starfish, crabs, octopi, and the sea sponge. One day, Steve's boss asked him if he could use his artistic skills to make a comic book project for incoming children.
I came up with this idea of doing this comic book called The Intertidal Zone, and it starred basically all these invertebrate sea creatures from the tide pools in Southern California, such as sea star, barnacles, short crabs, and actually the host was a sponge named Bob, but not like SpongeBob. He was a natural-looking sponge.
Steve didn't realize it then, but he just casually made the blueprint for one of the most successful cartoons of all time. After that, for years, he contemplated pursuing a career in art because all of his free time went to creating sculptures, drawings, and even films. But he still loved marine science and the consistent, reliable paycheck that came with his job. But then in the early 90s, his work got recognized by Nickelodeon showrunner Joe Murray, who gave Steven a job as an animation director for Rocko's Modern Life at the network. While working at Nick, one of his co-animators read the
I only know like 2003 or 4 animations up.
Zone comic he made 5 years earlier and convinced Steve to try to build his own show from it.
And then Martin was looking at the Intertidal comic that I had, and he said, "What are you, crazy? This is your show right here."
Steve developed early concepts starting with the main character, Sponge Boy. Steve loved how resilient sea sponges are. They've done studies where people put them in a blender only for the sea sponge to return to its natural form and stay alive. He could use Sponge Boy as a flexible character that could morph into crazy shapes, but he felt that it would be funnier if he resembled a kitchen sponge rather than an actual sea sponge, hence the square shape. Now Steve wanted this character to be an adult, but to have a childlike innocence, no hate in his heart, and oftentimes no adult logic to prevent him from getting into silly situations.
I would say the show is really about not losing your childlike sense in life.
After they learned Sponge Boy was already copyrighted, he chose the name SpongeBob SquarePants. And what's incredible is how much every single...
Who copyrighted Sponge Boy. Was already trademarked by a cleaning product company for a line of mops. That's crazy.
Single detail in the show was intentionally inspired by his marine science background.
What is he living in a pineapple? Why is he living in a pineapple? And then, first of all, my logic was, you know, it's Hawaiiana. The pineapple in some cultures represents friendship. Like in England, I think you'll see a door knocker.
It's all over because that meant
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, it makes sense that he would live in the pineapple.
Isn't a pineapple what swingers use on cruises to let you know that they want to have group sex?
Right? Because he's friendly.
Every aspect of the show was loosely logical.
Whoa, was SpongeBob a swinger?
And funny at the same time. SpongeBob's closest friend is a starfish named Patrick Star, who is the dumbest character of the show because actual starfish don't have brains. The owner of the Krusty Krab and SpongeBob's boss, Mr. Krabs, was based on the manager of a Maine seafood restaurant where Steve worked as a teenager. Mr. Krabs' entire identity surrounds his obsession with money and exploiting his workers and customers for profit. He's what people would call a bottom feeder, and crabs in real life feed on things at the bottom of the ocean. Sandy Cheeks is a squirrel from Texas who wears an astronaut suit that keeps her alive underwater.
Houston,
it was Steve's attempt at making a strong female character that embodied the adventurer spirit during the space missions to the moon overseen from Houston. Squidward Tentacles is actually Steve Hillenburg's way of joking about the other half of his real-life personality. He's a pretentious, aspiring artist, a mediocre band geek, and his name doesn't match his octopus body, representing the internal confusion with his own artistic identity.
Squidward's his name, but he's an octopus. I like the round head, but Squidward is funnier than Octoboy. Squidward is this curmudgeon, snotty, aloof, a wannabe artist. In a way, Squidward is the guy I can identify with most.
See, Squid belongs to some of those music societies, right? The clarinet, undersea clarinet society. Yeah, he's into interpretive dance and any kind of snobbery incorporated, he would be into. Subscribes to Fancy Living Digest. Anything that SpongeBob's not into, Squidward's probably into.
Steve got to be as creative and absurd as possible while creating his own show, and yet everything is there for a reason. While SpongeBob lives in a friendly pineapple, Squidward lives in an Easter Island head that plays on his big-headed ambitions. Patrick is an idiot who literally lives under a rock. Mr. Krabs runs a restaurant shaped like a giant lobster trap, along with living at home with his whale daughter, Pearl, in an anchor. Plankton owns the Chum Bucket restaurant that is
What is the whale daughter? What is the meaning from whale daughter?
always empty. Chum in real life is bait made out of dead fish to attract sharks. Since Plankton's potential customers are all fish, they probably don't want to partake in cannibalism. Sandy lives in a dome under the sea, inverting the
Dude, all fish eat other fish. What are you talking about?
phrase fish out of water to a mammal out of the air, and the town they live in is called Bikini Bottom. Most of us think about a bathing suit, however, it is also a dark humor reference to the Bikini Atoll nuclear site, which is located in the real-world country of the Marshall Islands. 67 nuclear weapons tests were carried out from 1946 to 1958, including the explosion of the first H-bomb. I personally love this detail because if there were talking sea creatures in a town in the ocean, it probably would have happened after nuclear radiation mutated all the living organisms. All of this is to say that
I bet there's hella Minecraft conspiracy theories on YouTube about this. That's hard.
Steve was arguably more of a pure artist than most traditional animators, and it's the loose logic that turns a good cartoon into a great cartoon. And even though Steve wasn't the most confident guy in the world, he knew he had a great idea, and he fought Nickelodeon hard to keep his idea from being destroyed. At the beginning, people give you notes and you have to fight back. It was a new show, and no one knows if a new show will work. Nick had decided it didn't want any more animal shows and wanted stories with kids, like Hey Arnold. They actually wanted to make Arnold Under the Sea and make SpongeBob a child. I said, no, that's not the show. In fact, Hillenburg almost walked out and refused to work with Nickelodeon until they came to a compromise. SpongeBob would go to school like a child, but it would be a boat driving school for young adults taught by a character named Mrs. Puff. And although the fandom now loves Mrs. Puff, this is the harsh reality of working with a corporation. You have to make concessions for the sake of making your bosses and executives happy, which is something that Hillenburg would grow extremely tired of in the coming years. But creating the animated world is only half the battle. Steve now needed the right voice actors to bring these characters to life. He chose Tom Kenny, who voiced Heifer in Rocko's Modern Life, for SpongeBob's voice. Tom later admitted that SpongeBob's high-pitched voice was inspired by a real-life little person who was angry about being typecast as an elf.
There was one guy at the audition, he was, in a different part of the corridor, and he was hanging with a couple of his buds, and just the most bitter, ticked-off little person in an elf outfit you've ever seen.
So this is the only, if it wasn't for the Christmas shit, I wouldn't work. This is the only time of the year that I work. It pisses me off. It's like, I'm glad to have it, knock on wood, but motherfucker, it's like...
And I was just like, wow. And I told Steve Hillenburg that story. Years go by. And he remembered that story. I totally even forgotten the story because it was something that happened to you on a day, and then you tell people that you run into that day, and then you kind of forget about it. And he said, remember that guy? So
that's kind of where SpongeBob came from, sort of like a munchkin, like a...
without the negativity.
Tom was the perfect voice for the role, and Hillenburg somehow managed to assemble a ton of underrated voice actors who gave
that's the actor from... What? Hold up a second, guys. Bro, Mr. Krabs was in Dexter, The Penguin, Shawshank Redemption, Gen V, John Wick, Thor Ragnarok, Lost, Punisher, The Flash, Flubber, yo, he's in so many good movies, guys.
Character and iconic vocal identity.
You play Plankton? Kaboom!
Larry, the lobster. Hey, I also play Fred.
My leg!
No, never! I'm on Team Krabs for life.
A team? Oh, pick me! We're out of Krabby Patties right now. Well, Plankton, like a reheated Krabby Patty, you've been foiled again.
I'll have two.
That is... Whoa, I hear ringing in my ears. I'm resetting. Hold on, my body's resetting. Dude, the ringing in my ear won't go away. Okay, it's fading now.
Krabby Patties, extra ketchup, extra mustard, and hold the mayo.
Prioritizing the art style over traditional storytelling, filling the cast with bizarre characters, and making the tone intentionally chaotic sounded like a disaster for a new kids show. To Nickelodeon executives, SpongeBob probably looked less like the future of children's television and more like an unmarketable experiment. But Steve didn't care. I was definitely interested in making a world that was different to anything on the air and to what had existed before. It was also to do with my interest in the ocean and background as a marine biologist, and I was conscious of creating something that I wanted to be my own. The SpongeBob SquarePants universe was the result of one guy's deeply personal creative vision, which ironically was about to make these corporate suits filthy rich. In 1999, SpongeBob SquarePants debuted on Nickelodeon and was an instant success. The pilot was called Help Wanted, along with two other sister episodes or episodes within an episode called Reef Blower and Tea at the Tree Dome, and right away it was clear that the show wasn't following the traditional rules of another animated series. series. For starters, Steve chose to introduce Bikini Bottom in a French accent. The reason behind the voice came from a French oceanographer, Jacques Cousteau, who was the first person on TV to inspire Hillenburg to be a marine biologist.
Here we see Bikini Bottom, teeming with life, home of one of my favorite creatures,
classic.
SpongeBob SquarePants. Yes, of course he lives in a pineapple, you silly.
And even for an animated show, SpongeBob was surprisingly colorful. The entire landscape was painted in light blues and greens with fine sand and rays of light all over to simulate the feeling of being underwater. But once again, if anything was beautiful or deep, it also came with something absurd to balance it out, like how the Hawaiian t-shirt flowers in the sky and sand looked like how they were drawn by a little kid, or how buildings in the backgrounds always looked like massive pieces of coral made out of metal. SpongeBob had the world's loudest foghorn alarm clock to make sure he was awake at the same time every day. He had a pet sea snail named Gary that was always annoyed and meowed like a cat. He had a closet full of the same exact SquarePants outfits. Instead of lifting weights, he lifted stuffed animals, to show he was extremely ambitious but adorably innocent. He hyped himself up, saying his signature catchphrase, "I'm ready," and his neighborhood friend Patrick popped out from his rock to support SpongeBob in his quest to live his lifelong dream to be a fry cook at the Krusty Krab. Additionally, most animated shows at the time were drawn on model, meaning they stuck to a fixed style guide to maintain consistency from frame to frame. However, SpongeBob SquarePants was created using off-model animation, meaning that every time you looked at SpongeBob, he was never exactly the same. His tie could be smaller, his face could be longer, his teeth could be bigger, but most importantly, his body and face was essentially elastic, so he could be stretched and transformed to literally wear his emotions, which meant that the writers didn't just have to rely on dialogue to tell their story or prove their point. They could visually tell stories by changing SpongeBob's physical form. And beyond off-model, Hillenburg's SpongeBob wasn't afraid to use really impressive sketching and painting to add drama to the scene. For example, when SpongeBob and Patrick meet Sandy in Tea in the Tree Dome, SpongeBob spends his first time in open air. Patrick makes SpongeBob believe that all he has to do is be fancy, telling him to keep his pinky up no matter what, but soon SpongeBob starts to slowly die in the tree dome, and Patrick stupidly tells SpongeBob to ignore water and keep his pinky raised. When they zoom in on his drying face, the details look closer to fine art rather than a cartoon. Of course, none of these techniques on their own were technically new, but SpongeBob SquarePants had put them together in a way that redefined modern animation. The highly detailed close-ups made for often uncomfortable and sometimes gross situations. But to take it even further than that, Hillenburg's team also had no trouble using real-life people as plot devices whenever they thought it was ridiculously funny. In a Season 2 Christmas special called Christmas Who, we're introduced to Tom Kenny dressed in a pirate's costume named Patchy the Pirate, with a parrot puppet named Potty. He'd be depicted as SpongeBob's #1 fan and become a major host in any SpongeBob specials. Or another strange episode where a man dressed up in a gorilla costume pops into frame, tries to kill Sandy and Patrick, rips SpongeBob in half, and gave nightmares to children around the world. Best kid.
That didn't give me nightmares. I was like, hell yeah. I was like, Pog.
Show ever. As if it couldn't get any better, the stories and character dynamics were damn near perfect. Initially, it seems like everyone in Bikini Bottom sees SpongeBob as a fool or pitiful man-child. Characters like Squidward, Mr. Krabs, and Plankton see his hopeful perspective as a weakness and try to exploit it for their own personal gain. But to Hillenburg, he said the premise for the show is that innocence prevails, which I don't think it always does in real life. And this is demonstrated constantly with his interactions with Squidward. But the first being jellyfishing, where SpongeBob and Patrick invite Squidward to catch jellyfish in jellyfish fields. Not only does he deny the invite, but he is a sarcastic jerk about it, which results in him getting hunted down by a jellyfish, stung, and then riding his bike off a cliff, which leaves him temporarily paralyzed. SpongeBob, who has no hate in his heart, realizes that Squidward needs help and decides to take care of him. From there, they take him jellyfishing to show him how much fun he is missing out on. Squidward seeks revenge on the jellyfish, only for him to get stung by a massive jellyfish that injures him even more. Basically, every time he has a cynical outlook.
I guess he's right, but what they said at the beginning of the first 3 seasons were like the best. Because every episode from the first 3 seasons is a goddamn Certified classic.
Or bad intentions, he pays for it by getting hurt. It was hilarious and sticks to Steve's message that innocence prevails. SpongeBob was never supposed to be dumb or foolish. He just has so much faith in the world around him that it creates new adventures and challenges. Hillenburg said, SpongeBob is a complete innocent, not an idiot. SpongeBob never fully realizes how stupid Patrick is. They're whipping themselves up into situations. That's always where the humor comes from. Hillenburg also wrote the show so that any character could be a foil character, which is a character who highlights the traits of another character through contrast or comparison. Sandy showed SpongeBob's lack of strength with karate. Mrs. Puff showed that he can study, but lacks the mental maturity and patience to actually drive. Mr. Krabs showed his lack of greed, and Plankton showed his lack of evil. But just when you think these characters are extremely predictable, Hillenburg always found a way to give them some depth, because in real life, we're not just one emotion or one character trait, like how he portrayed Squidward in the 5th episode of season 1 called Pizza Delivery. Mr. Krabs decides that the Krusty Krab should enter the pizza delivery service, and SpongeBob and Squidward have to personally deliver to the first customer.
Have any of you guys ever watched SpongeBob? I know a lot of you from Nigeria. Have you guys ever watched SpongeBob in Nigeria?
But they get lost and have to do this long, brutal journey on foot. Squidward is grumpy and annoyed like usual, but they eventually make it. Unfortunately, the customer refuses to pay because the delivery took too long and they forgot his drink. SpongeBob cries, feeling like a failure, and instead of siding with the customer, Squidward defends SpongeBob, taking the pizza to the ungrateful customer and smashing it into his face. Suddenly, all of us realize that Squidward was one of the most misunderstood characters. Maybe SpongeBob annoyed him all the time, but he wasn't gonna let some jerk disrespect his coworker. It established this kind of older brother, younger brother dynamic where Squidward low-key cares about SpongeBob, but is constantly annoyed by his antics to show it. But the greatest part about SpongeBob SquarePants was that the team somehow figured out a way to make this show appeal to kids and their parents. Kids enjoyed the silly physical comedy and songs like the Fun Song or Jellyfish Rave, and adults were able to laugh at the low-key inappropriate jokes that would never exist on kids' TV today.
That's it! Patrick, your genius is showing.
Where?
I feel like a big jerk.
I guess you're gonna miss the panty raid. Panty raid? You're talking about girls, right? Girls? Yeah. And you're talking about raiding their dressers for their underpants.
Leah, people watch the movie? I mean, like the SpongeBob movie? Are you saying people have never seen the TV show there? They've only watched the movie?
That's right. Oh, yeah.
That's
Give us
sad.
some credit, old man. We're panty professionals.
We score here all the time.
By the end of season 2, it wasn't just a cult classic. SpongeBob's face alone was a marketing goldmine, with images of SpongeBob and the other characters appearing on items ranging from thong underwear to boxes of macaroni and cheese. Sales of merchandise related to the show reached...
I love the macaroni and cheese. This one. Well, at least, like what it was 10 years ago. I'm not sure if it's the same now. It probably tastes way different with how they change foods. But back then, I love that. Just the fact that I could eat little SpongeBobs was like made it taste 10 times better.
$750 million. He quickly became a cultural icon. And by season 3, the show really had reached its peak. 3 of the major standouts were Club SpongeBob, where Squidward is stranded with Patrick and SpongeBob while they follow a mechanical magic conch. Squidward doesn't believe in the power of the conch, but ultimately gives in when they get everything they wish for. Or the Idiot Box, where SpongeBob and Patrick purchase a massive TV with the intention to throw it out and only play inside the box it was delivered in. Squidward takes the TV from the trash thinking he got the better deal.
Oh, so people do watch the TV show where you are? Good. Because this is one of the best shows of all time. I swear to God.
but
SpongeBob is
realizes that
goated.
television leaves him feeling bored and empty inside. It was a fun way to show children that you don't need TV to explore new worlds if your imagination is strong enough. But the season favorite has to be Chocolate with Nuts, where Patrick and SpongeBob try to get rich by selling chocolate bars as entrepreneurs. They keep getting scammed by a cruel salesman while running away from a fish screaming chocolate at the top of his lungs, and it's only when they can't run anymore that they realize the maniac is willing to give them a small fortune. It was the kind of season that made SpongeBob look like the next Simpsons, but for kids. There was nothing they couldn't do, and it had the potential to never end. But just as SpongeBob was becoming a worldwide phenomenon, Steve Hillenburg wanted it to be done. "I definitely need a break," Hillenburg told The Times. "I want to try something new. I think the network wants to make a SpongeBob movie. I also want to make a movie. I wouldn't want to try and work on the series concurrently with the film." At that point, Steve was gearing up for the SpongeBob movie to be the conclusion of the show.
Nah. The original SpongeBob movie was supposed to be the end. That's probably why the movie was so good.
And everyone started losing their damn minds. A longtime crew member, Kenny Pittenger, said, "Many people were astonished when SpongeBob ended after the 3rd season. It's at the height of its popularity, but it's so funny. Aren't you guys getting great ratings? Has Steve gone crazy?" Steve had several reasons for ending it when he did, but even though I don't know any of the specifics, the movie undoubtedly factored into his decision. Steve said he was going to end the show after the 3rd season so the show wouldn't jump the shark. The show was such a cash cow for the station that it couldn't afford to. Steve was able to leave and still gets a cut of the merchandising, so I'm happy for him. Hillenburg always approached this show as an artist with a story to tell. He made enough money, he was set for life, and now that the story was over, it was time to move on and create new things. But as we all know, corporations don't care about art. And even if Steve was going to walk away, Nickelodeon was never remotely considering actually canceling SpongeBob SquarePants. So instead of it ending on a high note, SpongeBob would slowly become an example of what happens when a corporation takes a piece of art and milks it dry until it becomes an unrecognizable shell of what it once was. According to everyone working on the SpongeBob movie, the process behind making it was one of the most challenging periods of their lives. Even crew members like Eric Weiss, who had left the show to work on cult classics like Samurai Jack and Danny Phantom, returned to make sure it was a success. "I always wanted to be a feature animator, and the movie felt like I was on the character animation end. It was a blast. It felt like coming home. We saw how stressed Steve and Derek were, so we wanted to work hard for them. We all felt like we had some ownership of SpongeBob, like we were a family that helped raise him. We loved the little guy. Those cartoonists are my buddies, and I wanted to put in all the extra effort I could for them. Seeing SpongeBob on the big screen, wow, that was huge. It was quite a journey." And looking back, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie did seem like a decent way to finish a classic series that showed experimental kids animation at its peak. SpongeBob became the manager of the Krusty Krab 2, he won the respect of his peers as a young adult while still embracing his inner childlike creativity, and Plankton was sent to prison for his countless crimes. And even better, the movie included all of the classic devices that made the show so special, with live-action cameos, songs, and adult jokes that made it feel more like the longest episode ever rather than a film.
She's Birdie, SpongeBob.
God, I love this
Here,
movie.
take this. What's in here?
It's a magical bag of winds. I stole them from my father.
You're hot.
But again, Nickelodeon had no intentions on ending the show, and it seemed like they were low-key grooming animator Paul Tibbitt to be the next Steve Hillenburg. Paul said, "I was wrapping up on the movie and the network wanted to do more shows." Steve said, "No, I want to finish the movie," and he wasn't even sure if he wanted to go back to the show. He felt he'd done what he set out to accomplish, and he wanted to take a step back and try something different. I had sort of been training to take over the job. After we finished writing the last season, they kept me around because they had a couple of things in mind. Originally, they were going to do a couple of specials after the 3rd season. I was shadowing Steve and Derek, and I got to go to a lot of the records and editing sessions, so I'd been training to do that job, not knowing it would be for SpongeBob. They just wanted to keep me around in case something popped up. But when we were working on the movie, they came in one day and said, "We want to make more episodes, but Steve doesn't want to." And I said, "I'll do it." They came back the next day and said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Sure." It was just being in the right place place at the right time.
What a
And
piece
many
of
fans
shit.
interpret this as the exact moment that SpongeBob was stolen from Steven Hillenburg. But the harsh truth is that Hillenburg lost control over the SpongeBob IP the second he sold it to Nickelodeon. That might not make it right, but that's just how the business has worked for decades. The artist creates the show, they get a cut of the merch and rerun earnings, and if they're really lucky, they might be able to maintain creative control while it's running. Steve knew this, and given that SpongeBob was so massively popular, he had a hard
That
choice
is so dumb, though. They should be able to have control.
to make. Either he could be trapped in the writer's room for all eternity and maintain control of his story, or he could let go of the day-to-day operations and do what makes him happy.
After I did the movie, Paul came in and basically has been running the show kind of in my shoes.
Did you just need a rest at that point, you think?
I felt like it's time for new blood. I think it's good to change things up to keep it fresh.
And while Steve would remain as an executive producer of the show after season 3, his role went from being the guy making sure that every single aspect of the show was perfect to someone who just kind of oversees and gives his opinion after the episodes are complete, and the team can consider his thoughts if they want to, but realistically they don't have to listen to him. And Steve's absence from the day-to-day grind was extremely noticeable as soon as season 4 aired. The downfall of SpongeBob SquarePants had officially begun. At its best, SpongeBob season 4 was rated a point or two lower than every episode from seasons 1 through 3. At its worst, it was getting massacred by a disappointed fan base that felt that the spirit of the original SpongeBob was fading away. The only halfway decent episodes in my opinion were Krusty Towers, where Mr. Krabs turns the Krusty Krab into a hotel, and Skill Crane, where Squidward gets addicted to winning a prize from a claw machine. But even still, the captivating storytelling was missing.
When I was little, I don't think I noticed a difference in quality between them. I think I was just like brain rot kid. And that's why they're still able to make 20 billion seasons, because there's just new brain rot kids. And they're so young, they don't care.
It felt boring, and this only spiraled out of control in later seasons, where a lot of fans felt like it wasn't even the same show anymore, but more like a knockoff that took its place and destroyed the characters. Over the next 10 years, the SpongeBob writers reduced the characters significantly through a process called Flanderization. It was originally named after Ned Flanders from The Simpsons, who was originally depicted as a friendly, generous Christian neighbor and a model father, husband, and citizen, making him a contrast to Homer Simpson. As seasons progressed, however, he became increasingly obsessively religious to the point where he eventually embodied almost every negative stereotype of the God-fearing, Bible-thumping American Christian evangelist. And it applies to any character. It's the act of taking a single, often minor action or trait of a character within a work and exaggerating it more and more over time until it completely consumes the character. This got so bad that SpongeBob fans refer to season 6 through 9 as the Dark Era. For Squidward, the complaints mainly stemmed from what is referred to as Squidward torture. In early episodes, Squidward would be a jerk, which led to him getting a deserved and silly punishment. What changed is that he would start getting unfairly treated or, at worst, tortured for seemingly no reason. In Choir Boys, Squidward desperately wants to perform at a concert, only for SpongeBob's non-stop screaming to literally destroy his throat and ruin the opportunity entirely. In Boating Buddies, Squidward gets trapped spending the day with SpongeBob, leading to him being falsely arrested and publicly embarrassed despite doing almost nothing wrong. Squid's Visit takes it even further, with Squidward finally escaping SpongeBob, only to discover SpongeBob has secretly recreated his entire house inside his own home, turning the episode into something that feels like a genuinely unsettling Black Mirror episode instead of silly and funny. Episodes like Slide Whistle Stooges and Giant Squidward kept pushing this same formula. Squidward wasn't really a flawed, misunderstood character getting comedic payback anymore. He was just plain miserable and being tortured for it. And over time, that subtle shift completely changed the tone of the show, leading to this extremely dark joke.
I can't seem to get happy. Maybe this will help.
For Sandy Cheeks, it was more about how she became more and more obsessed with science than anything else. The dimensions of her personality as a strong Texan with nothing to lose were mostly replaced, making her just feel kind of dull. Sandy's rocket was literally the only time in the older episodes where she showed an interest in science. Then, right out of nowhere, she's suddenly obsessed with it. Now, a lot of the newer episodes are just her dumb experiments. But what they did to Patrick Star could be the worst of them all. He's always been a dumb sidekick for SpongeBob, but he never did anything with the intention to harm people.
Hey, Patrick, are you angry too?
Yeah.
What's the matter?
Can't see my forehead.
During the Dark Era, they made him insufferably dumb. No charm at all, just one brain cell. Like in The Splinter, where SpongeBob gets a splinter in his thumb and calls Dr. Patrick, whose office is in the Krusty Krab dumpster. Patrick then starts the exam by chewing on SpongeBob's foot, and then he gets mad when SpongeBob says that's not helping. From there, instead of trying to pull the little piece of wood out, Patrick decides to hammer the splinter deeper into SpongeBob's thumb and then rubs garbage all over it to reduce the swelling. Like at this point, this isn't even just Patrick being dumb. Like it almost seems like he's just intentionally trying to cause harm. The writing here is so lazy that it goes beyond dumb. It's just nonsensical. Doctors' offices are supposed to be clean, so they put Patrick in a dumpster. You're supposed to pull the splinter out, so Patrick pushes it further in. The wounds are supposed to be sterile so they don't get an infection, and he puts garbage all over it. Just making Patrick do the opposite of what he's supposed to do is nonsensical. There's no charm. Like he used to have this charm to his dumbness. Like in a way, Patrick was so dumb that you almost thought he was onto something.
Oh, if only I knew how to work this thing.
Let me take a look at it. You know what the problem is?
What?
You got it set to M for Minnie, when it should be set to W for Wumbo.
And as if the new writing wasn't bad enough, Patrick from here was often depicted as extremely selfish, cruel, and weirdly aggressive towards SpongeBob in newer episodes. In Yours, Mine, and Mine, Patrick is particularly insufferable as he tries to force SpongeBob to share his toy with him.
Oh my god, okay. Thank god. That's my favorite episode. I got scared for a second that my favorite episode wasn't gonna be in the first three seasons.
Hey, Patrick, have you met my new toy?
Don't you mean our new toy?
Our new toy?
It came from the meal that we're sharing.
Sharing?
Remember, sharing is the most wonderful feeling in the world, like dancing with a magical seahorse through an enchanted kelp garden. Remember those words, SpongeBob?
I didn't say that, but I guess we can share, Patty Pal.
And in Stuck in the Ringer, SpongeBob gets trapped in a towel wringer so he can't move his arms, hands, or even swallow his food. Instead of trying to efficiently help him out, the writers again make Patrick do the opposite thing that he should do, and he decides to glue SpongeBob to the ringer, thinking it will fix it, but it traps SpongeBob even more. From there, Patrick decides to take SpongeBob to the carnival while he has an amazing time, and SpongeBob has to sit there and watch how much fun he is having without him. When SpongeBob finally defends himself, Patrick cries and the whole town sees SpongeBob as the bad guy.
You know, kid, your body isn't the problem. It's your heart. You deserve what you've gotten. Come on, we're out of here.
SpongeBob then falls into a deep depression and Patrick comes over, cries again, and his tears melt the glue, which allows SpongeBob to break free. And then they literally make SpongeBob say the lesson to be learned from this story in the end.
I guess crying does solve your problems after all.
Not only is this terrible, nonsensical, and not even remotely funny,
you serious,
I've never
bro?
seen them have to explain the point of an episode at the end. It's also increasingly obvious that SpongeBob has only been for kids after Steven Hillenburg left. And it was always a kid's show, but what made it so different was the fact that parents could watch alongside their kids and enjoy it, so they could share laughs and make memories together. But SpongeBob acts and behaves more like a baby than ever before, making it unwatchable for adults. The characters don't feel like adults anymore. In the original show, while SpongeBob was childish, he never felt like a kid. He just felt like an optimistic adult with childish hobbies. But now everyone just feels like a kid in an adult's body.
Nah, that's
but in
facts.
the newer seasons, he just
Anime
cries over
girl.
stupid reasons. Breaking a spatula, tripping over his toe, ripping his favorite shirt, while several others just like it are hanging right behind it. Honestly, I cannot with the stupidity of modern SpongeBob. And most people's rebuttal is, bro, you're just getting older. But the crazy part is, this all started way back in seasons 4 and 5. A lot of us were still little kids at that time. I remember being like 9 or 10 and thinking these episodes just felt different. And now I'm just reanalyzing realizing as
What
an
the
adult
hell?
and
What time
seeing
was
I
season
was
3?
right. But it wasn't just the writing that
What year
negatively
is that?
impacted this iconic show. SpongeBob's own animation was losing a lot of its initial charm. It started with subtle changes like better lighting and vibrant colors after the first movie, which is understandable. They have to keep up with the times. But in 2015, when Hillenburg and Nickelodeon released SpongeBob Sponge
That
Out
was
of
so
Water,
bad.
the visual identity of the main show was essentially dead and replaced with something else. They switched to 1080i high-definition animation. It wasn't even close to the gritty, imperfect, experimental animation that attracted many of us to the series in the first place. Everything was smoothed out, glossy, and in some cases looked completely three-dimensional. And while they still used SpongeBob's elasticity and Bikini Bottom's crazy characters for comedic purposes, it felt like it was all to make up for lazy writing. No depth, no good character arcs, just introducing new, random, exotic characters like a Rick and Morty episode. Not to mention how they constantly turned SpongeBob into something grotesque and unsettling. They seem to be particularly obsessed with characters ripping their skin off. And despite the show being objectively worse in every way possible, the strong legacy
That is crazy. All green and all shit.
of Steve's original creation led to the show maintaining pretty decent ratings over the years. It's almost like with every new season, people hoped the original charm would come back. SpongeBob actually won the Favorite Cartoon Award every year from 2003 to 2021, except in 2008 when Avatar
Well, what has the original creator of SpongeBob done since?
The Last Airbender momentarily took the spotlight. SpongeBob had transcended TV ratings. He was a generational cultural icon similar to Mickey Mouse. Nickelodeon literally needed him to survive because he was an extension of their identity. After the release of the Sponge Out of Water film in 2015, Steven Hillenburg actually returned to work more closely on the show, and many fans felt like Steve was going to breathe new life into this series. But even with him back in the writer's room, bringing SpongeBob back from the grave would take a miracle. TV as a whole was phasing out as social media took over, and tragically, Steven Hillenburg did not have much time left. In a formal statement to fans in 2017, Steve wrote, "I wanted people to hear directly from me that I have been diagnosed with ALS. Anyone who knows me knows I will continue to work on SpongeBob SquarePants and my other passions for as long as I am able. My family and I are grateful for the outpouring of love and support. We ask that our sincere request for privacy be honored during this time. For those unfamiliar with ALS, the disease leads to muscle weakness and gets worse over time. ALS often begins with muscle twitching and weakness in an arm or leg, trouble swallowing, or slurred speech. Eventually, ALS affects the muscles needed to move, speak, eat, and breathe. The last time the public would see Hillenburg before his death in 2018 was when he received an Emmy Award from his old friend Tom Kenny.
SpongeBob's vocal cords might be mine, but SpongeBob's playful spirit of gentle anarchy, his humor, and the joy he takes in his vibrant, colorful, music-filled world come directly 100% from my good buddy, Mr. Steven Hillenburg. I love you, brother. Thank you.
Shy.
Steven Hillenburg ultimately passed away peacefully in his home in November of 2018. And after his death, there was a constant discussion about what Steve would have wanted for the future of SpongeBob SquarePants.
That's so
because
young.
less than 3 months after his death, Nickelodeon announced that they were developing spin-off projects for SpongeBob SquarePants characters for the first time ever. Immediately, fans were suspicious as Hillenburg discussed his reluctance towards spin-offs in 2000.
That's crazy. They wait for his death and then just abuse everything. That is disgusting of Nickelodeon.
2009, he said, "The show is about SpongeBob. He's the core element, and it's about how he relates to the other characters. Patrick by himself might be a bit too much, so I don't see any spin-offs." Camp Coral was announced in June of 2019, which was immediately met with extreme backlash. The updated show was CG animated, and it followed the adventures of SpongeBob and his friends as 10-year-old kids. The show completely backpedals on whatever remained of the original plot of SpongeBob, and pretends like SpongeBob knew all of these characters since he was a child. Even Paul Tibbett posted a tweet confronting the staff on the project, arguing that this was all for the sake of greed. Do not mean any disrespect to my colleagues who are working on this show. They are good people and talented artists, but this is some greedy, lazy executiving right here, and they all know full well Steve would have hated this. Shame on them. But the situation got more complicated and confusing when I'm Urging You to Leave, a Camp Coral short based based on the series was leaked in 2021 that featured a credit saying that the show was created by Hillenburg. Tom Kenny also spoke out against the backlash, saying, "We were a little unsure about the CGI thing too. SpongeBob is such a determinedly 2D classic animated looking show. They were able to find a way to take that CGI and lend it the same squashy, stretchy, kinetic, the craziness of 2D classic animation. That was a puzzle they worked really hard to figure out, and I think are still learning on Camp Coral. I think it's fun to have to learn new tricks when you've been doing something for a while, so it doesn't become stale." And in a now deleted series of tweets, the current SpongeBob showrunner Vincent Waller said, "Steve was aware it was being developed. Sadly, he did not get to see it completed. I think it would have made him smile." Saying,
"What a piece of shit."
"I don't see any spin-offs" is in no way saying, "I would never do a spin-off." Just like when he said he had no interest in doing a movie, yet lo and behold, not only did he make a movie, but he took part in 3 of them. So can we give a rest to the "he would nevers"? Then again, it wasn't just this one spin-off. The network has released The Patrick Star Show. Again, Steve explicitly said in the past that this would be too much. The Title Zone, and additional films like the Sandy Cheeks movie and Plankton the movie. And it's because of all this that many fans believe Steven Hillenburg is rolling in his grave as the greedy Nickelodeon executives rinse his sponge until it's bone dry. But I think that is a bit of an overstatement. I think we can infer from Steve's past quotes that the artist in him never saw SpongeBob going past season 3, let alone becoming a legacy character like Mickey Mouse. He probably didn't love all these wacky new ideas, spin-offs, and concepts, but he understood that his creation was much bigger than him. It was generational. Add on the fact that he developed friends and relationships with the hardworking folks who worked on this show and would probably want them to keep their jobs. It's unlikely that all of these spin-offs were thought of the moment he passed away, as shows generally take years and years to develop. He probably was aware of them or was even presented them during his tenure. And since Steve was a great guy and was open-minded, he probably genuinely considered every new idea that was presented to him and tried to make it make sense while still maintaining the artistic integrity of the original show. Maybe he did even work on some of these spin-offs, but I don't think it's a coincidence that 0 spin-offs were greenlit while Steve was alive, because if SpongeBob's legacy was truly up to Steven Hillenburg and not a multi-billion-dollar network, the show would have never made it past 2004. SpongeBob is a great reminder that the best cartoons are the ones that adults
So I was 3 years old when SpongeBob
can watch too, because historically, cartoons
So I was used to most of the bad
were
shit.
actually never made for kids. But check out this video if you want to hear that story.
I was used to most of the bad episodes. I saw the old ones, but just reruns, and I definitely, at least I don't think I recognize anything.
Austin, super hot. Every girl wants a shot, but he can't go to the bars no more. His race is too high, it's lore. He loves LeBron, that's for sure, but the girls, they just want more. Austin, what to do when every girl wants you?